Hey everyone, thanks so much for coming by to Vox Talks. But first, Space Marine Dog.
Like and subscribe to Vox Talks for the Dog Emperor.
Now that I have your attention, I wanted to go ahead and shoot this video to share my experience talking about the Mayhem GT. It's an event that happened over here in Raleigh over the weekend, and I had a interesting time. I'm glad I went. I took some harsh learning lessons that I will get into, but I'll go ahead and I'll give a spoiler here to really begin off with. Don't take a faction and an army that you've never played actually on the tabletop for the first time to a GT with any expectations to win. I had only played my Iron Hands Hammer of Avernite attachment like 3 times on Tabletop Simulator, and that was a mistake. But to actually roll the credits back a little bit here before we talk about the whole experience and a little bit of a round-by-round recap, I want to share a quick thank you to some of the, I think, awesome folks in the community like Izzy Sanchez and one of my good buddies named Lee, who are both phenomenal players back in the Charlotte area. And Lee in particular, man, thank you so much for always making sure that I keep my head up. You're such a positive, I think, aura, and I really appreciate being able to roll dice with you, my friend. So, shifting away from some of this stuff, if you've never been to a GT like this, it was a, I think, 175 person event in which I finished 139th after day one. I was only able to play in day one. It was my wife's birthday over the weekend, and this is one of those things that we had talked about leading up to the event that, wanted to make sure I was being a good husband and prioritizing her, and we had really came to a pretty healthy conclusion, like, hey, I'll play in day one, which was her birthday, and then make sure that we hang out that Sunday when she's off. So I did not play in day two, which, to be honest with you, I don't know if my results would have really varied very much. But regardless, taking kind of a different change in gears, what I want to talk to you all about is kind of what I had really learned at this GT. So yeah, right, we already went ahead and beat up the fact that I took a new detachment for the first time, which don't do that, right? I can go ahead and hem and haw about that. But I think the other big thing that I wanted to bring up was I was kind of questioning myself and having a little bit of internal dialogue and understanding, like, why was I angry when I left the event? I made sure to, at least I try to do my very best to be a good opponent and not be a negative experience across the other side of the table, right? And keep my head up, stay engaged, and just, be intentional with how I was playing. But I had walked away from that event a little bit frustrated, and I think I realized that ultimately the reason why I was frustrated is because Warhammer 40K is a game with such a high expression of skill, and it's an awesome thing to experience. And when you're getting that experience and you're kind of achieving those heights, when you don't play up to that level and you know that you can be doing better, it ultimately kind of makes you hold a mirror up to yourself and have an honest conversation. So I had understand that over the last month, I maybe was not playing as much Warhammer and I was not as seasoned as I would have liked to have been leading up to this event. But I think the big thing was that I had decided to ultimately abandon the faction that I had been playing really the entire edition, my Ultramarines, something that I considered myself as a bit of a faction specialist in. So that way I could get a little bit of a counter meta idea. So it was a bit of a wild hair, and I think it was a bit of a humbling lesson when I take a step back and just kind of review it. But with all of that being said, let's actually get into a round by round of what happened and the overall experience. So going into round number 1, I played against Necrons, which was super fun. I played against Curse Legion, and I played against a guy named Phil who has his own basing company called Epic Basing. I'll make sure to tag them. Please check them out. Pretty cool company that's making these unique little bases, or rather bits, I should say, that will go onto your bases so you can add a little bit of extra kind of creativity and pop. Hopefully that picked up pretty well on the camera. I've got some metal crates and some steel structures and some little weapon coils and energy effects that I think are going to be really cool. But shifting back. Okay, so to kick it off, round 1 jitters, we went ahead and got paired against Necrons. Played against a really fun Cursed Legion detachment that is more of the melee-focused build for Necrons, which is honestly a bit of a unicorn out in the wild. You predominantly see Star Shatter and Awakened Dynasty and maybe even a little bit of Pantheon of Woe, but it was really cool to see someone build out around the Cursed Legion detachment, because it's actually a build that I think has a lot of viability as someone who runs a Necron army just a few times in my own experience. It's something that I would like to build to, and I thought it was super cool to see. I did not really position correctly, and I kind of threw some pieces out that should not have been sacrificed in some kind of just boneheaded decisions. When I walked away from that round, I walked up to a table of friends and said, okay, I had a battle plan, and I basically took that battle plan and I threw it out of the window. This is kind of one of those consequences like I was talking about in the beginning of the video, when if you don't play that army actually physically on the tabletop and you just rely too much on Tabletop Simulator, you'll very much see that it just like the whole piloting of it is completely different. There's something about the perspectives and physically standing over the table and maneuvering the models as opposed to doing it on the computer. That's a pretty different experience. However, he was a really cordial opponent. I made sure to keep my head up and stay as positive as I can and put up as much of a fight as I could. Unfortunately, I do think it ended up finishing out like 98-46, which is going to be a trend in almost even all of my wins. Like, I could not score enough to really just claw my way into like any type of a strong position, which was once again complete piloting error. Shifting over into round 2, I got paired up against Ultramarines, which I was really excited about. Don't tell my Ultramarines at home that felt like I was cheating on them, because it was kind of like seeing my ex-girlfriend with my high school bully. I went against another teammate from that player 1 that I had encountered from that Victrix Hero Gaming, I think that was their name. All super cordial guys. I had seen this individual before. His name was Frank at the Ravenforge tournament. We were both playing there at an RTT at top table spots, and we were both running our Ultramarines at that time, and he was standing next to me. Really cool guy, and it was cool to come across him in the wild. For this one, this was definitely one of those games where I had the opportunity, I think, to win the game, and he even agreed. However, I played turns 1 and 2 exactly how I should have. The Vectoria from Euro Ventris was pretty oppressive throughout the round, and it prevented me from using Armor of Contempt and my -1 damage strat, but the -1 damage strat by itself was enough to keep enough Terminators alive, so that way when he committed that unit, they failed the assassination attempt. In the hit back though, this is where I messed up pretty bad. What I ended up getting into was really targeting all of the wrong things. When you take a look at what it is that can kill your army most efficiently, those have to be the target #1 priority things. And for that, it was the Victrix Guard and Rebute Gilliman. Instead, I tried to nuke both of his Rep-X's, which I did, and then I went for the charge and I killed Gilliman. But of course he got back up, which is something that I know you have to play against. I knew, but I didn't exercise it in this time, that if you're going to go up against Gilliman or any type of a model with a get back up mechanic, you should always plan to shoot them and then bank on the fact that they will stand back up and then charge and kill them, because it's at the end of the phase. So that one pretty much shifted it away from me, and he was able to really just flip the entire game at that point, and so I walked away with yet again another loss. And this is where I want to take a moment and just let you know what's going through my head as we're going into round 3. At this point, I'm offering my Terminators for sale in the parking lot. I'm like, who wants these guys for $5? But in reality, I'm just going to put them in a little box, put them in the corner of my room, and when I feel like playing them again, that's when I'll bring them out. But I had to make sure that I was at least, viable and ready to claw myself into a win. And when I say claw myself into a win, I don't mean that you stop playing intentional, but still like keep your head up and have a little bit of focus. And that was the thing that Lee consistently reminded me of. Every time he would come to check in on me on each in-between round, he was like, hey man, you're doing experimental stuff, shrug it off and just keep going, right? So going into round 3, I got paired against the perfect almost chaos reflection of my list. It was somebody, instead of running 20 Terminators like me, he was running 30. It was a newer gentleman to the hobby scene, local in the area, I believe, named Chris. Really nice guy. Ultimately, what I was able to do was kind of outmaneuver and outposition and force a lot of bad trades early on. So that way I removed his resources. So that way by turns 4 and 5, he didn't really have enough left to really play the game, and I effectively was able to run away with it and outscore him. So that was my GT experience, kind of in a nutshell. I'm not gonna lie to you all, this is actually my second take at this video. I am still trying to figure out these camera lenses and these different angles, because coloring between camera A and camera B is so drastically different. And I talked to some buddies of mine, or rather just some professional videographers at a work event I was at on Wednesday, and then they gave me some insight. of which none of it I remember. And thank you for one of you for following me. So I really need to probably directly message you and get some of those tips again. Sorry about that. But it was ultimately just something that I'm going to take away as a learning experience and be really reflective and I think internalize everything that I learned and walked away with, and be thankful that I could roll some dice, be in such a great community, and keep my head up and look forward to 11th edition. By the way, I'm playing in one more RTT next month, and you can bet you, I don't know how many kids are going to watch this, so I don't want to get demonetized or turn anyone off. But you can bet all the marbles I'm bringing my Ultramarines, and I'm coming out for blood.